All right, so welcome everyone for Cloud Computing and Big Data, our lecture 10, the second part on software as a service. In the first part, we basically realized that software as a service, this stack components or applications really, actually are based on a very good infrastructure as a service, and of course are built usually with interesting platform as a service components. So in a way, they're all, basically intertwined with each other. But SaaS has really this nature of being a ready-to-run application. You basically swipe the credit card, you have a very specific service you're interested in, the CRM system, as we explored a little bit, the customer relationship management, huge market, billions basically in the internet. And with one click, you can enroll. You have, of course, to provide your credit card, and from there you go. What we now will basically discuss in the second part is a bit what can we build in terms of business models on that? Things like cross-selling, or basically what challenges are there, where we're alluding a little bit here in the break already to the security discussions, right? That we always getting it basically more and more known through social media, and with one click I can pull together information from one person via these systems. So there are also some dangers. We talk a bit about data locality, about the Patriot Act with US and law agencies, and basically interesting topics which in one respect are all related to SaaS applications and quite an interesting topic. And we start a little bit with the idea of cross-selling. So think again, maybe 10 years back when SaaS applications were not really existing fully, or maybe 15 years back. What you have done is you basically buy a contact manager in a store, or you maybe here and there download one contact manager in the internet, you buy it, then you basically go downtown and buy something which is more, let's say, something for tables, so that you can put some information for your products in, a product manager of sorts, and then you come back and you basically have two applications running, right? And then, of course, you would have some interesting email client, maybe Gmail, which is disconnected from my product, disconnected from my contact manager, and so on. And what's happening with this idea of cross-selling really in the cloud of SaaS applications is essentially what you see here, right? It's a very powerful example where, of course, you basically just enrolled in the CRM to swipe your credit card for this particular model. You say, okay, you have access to this particular service, but you have a whole plethora store applications just next to it, right? You can have a big, basically, part on sales intelligence. So basically, if you just want to have your customers tracked and a little bit, have their relationship, they're not buying anymore. So automatically, you probably send 3 months before now a reminder. It's actually time for renewal. And it's lots of things. But if you want to have sales pictures and so on, you have a complete new module to really increase and boost your sales, if you are into this, right? Others maybe just want to have customer relations. Then you basically have a huge idea of contacts, contact manager, all of that in one click. And this is nicely integrated so that you don't have to, of course, now have many different applications, activated. You just have still Zoho. Then you want to do an email product campaign with advertising. So you buy the email collaboration part. With one click in your contact manager, you basically get them all, the advertising done. You don't go to Outlook or Gmail and put all the different email addresses in that you want to contact for this sector, for this branch, for this product line, whatever. So all of that is so interestedly integrated. And so it's just one example that I personally use, but you go into others like Fresh Sales and so on, they have all similar model structure. Of course, this costs. It's not coming for free, right? So the moment you do cross-selling and go basically one step to the right or one step to the left, here it's $10 more, there it's $20 more. You have to pay for it. And of course, for you as an individual, you think, well, for 10 euros more, I get a very cool contact manager that is integrated in my customer relationship management. I do it on a monthly basis, and suddenly the price accumulates. Hence, of course, for us, in a way, very beautiful. We have monitoring of it, lots of proactivity. As I said, nowadays, we have really lots of modules with AI. So they analyze already certain purchase behavior and can classify a certain customer that will be a customer that don't buy the product anymore. So 5 months before this happens, the system will say, you have to contact this person because otherwise you will lose interest and don't buy the product anymore, or doesn't renew the subscription. All AI to the rescue, and this is nicely integrated as well. Now you go maybe make more developments yourself, then you have bug trackers, you do more document management, you have docs, you can get the story by now. I think that's pretty clear. Needless to say, also again, doing this with kind of social media, having their modules to analyze this, connect to it, doing meetings, you know, Zoom and so on integrated. You see also in a way from the core business model, which was really CRM, they're kind of leaving usually their business model or their core business model like CRM, but of course gives added value. And this is the idea of cross-selling. And this is a really strong business case in the SaaS space, where you today say, even Google Cloud, right? Everything is free. But if you go and look now what Google has in terms of services here and there, more storage, Microsoft the same way, you go to OneDrive, basically from different applications, buy more storage. Of course, they're all very similar in one respect, but are all different providers of these. And they can react, of course, online. And that's why I brought this interesting example quite nicely, because you think about that, you can change the software on the fly, right? Again, react to crisis like we've seen here. Suddenly there's this interesting COVID going on and many of the normal business ways doesn't work anymore, right? Hence what they will show you featured and say here is basically just one click away, Zoho meeting, all integrated meeting with your customers, not anymore on site, but online, right? They can change the software and try to give you opportunities to improve your business on the fly, which is again a cross-selling idea. Normally you have to have cold calls to this person, would you be interested, you know, doing meetings, and here it's all one click away to really buy this. And as I said, react to crisis here with the COVID-19 pandemic, just beautiful. And yes, lots of things are underneath, however, in terms of security needed for that. And to be honest, talk about security would mean a complete course. This is something what I cannot provide here. We actually working on a cybersecurity curriculum. So we got some money from the government. That's good to basically create a master of cybersecurity together with the University of Reykjavik now, because this is really lacking here. And as I said, I can just touch the surface with this little slide here. It's really going to all different levels. You can imagine the networking level, starting with this network security, then basically having the higher level of thing, managing all the data, managing, you know, the areas that you have in the applications, and lots of areas where this kind of cloud security is really in different areas, like security we discussed in the break, privacy rules, right, of membership countries from the EU maybe, and things like that. So maybe you cannot access all the data and so on. Copyright protection. I mean, many of you know that someone has a YouTube channel, for instance, that is very apparent, for instance, there. If you load up a video, it's copyright checked, and sometimes it said copyright claim automatically, right? So we'll directly know this video was shown somewhere else. Or another example of this, you have seen probably the clapping of the, you know, Icelanders when they were scoring all the time. You want to upload this on Facebook, not allowed, right? In some cases, because the copyrights were already with the TV channel. Right, so it was basically automatically removed because of the copyright claim instantly, right? You just put share with your things and removed. Some forms of security which really works well today, again, through the cloud, right? So which basically helps, of course, many people that have songs, for instance. When you put a YouTube video on with a song which has rights on it, directly, basically copyright claim, and will be marked at this. And then basically either you take the video down or you don't get revenues for it. There are different ways how they handle this, to be honest, but still these are all different security measures. And this is, of course, very differently handled here and there in the clouds, but you can imagine that many of the high scalers that you have today have really big teams to secure your data. So you should be also not scared about this. I think usually this is something which is on the technical level very well understood. But of course, sometimes if you think you just buy the infrastructure, in infrastructure as a service, it's up to you to also define who is, you know, seeing the services, and one wrong click maybe in AWS makes it more accessible to a broader audience that you didn't want. But that's your problem. You have just the infrastructure bought, right? Not the platform, not the service or the software as a service, the infrastructure. What you do with the infrastructure, losing your data or opening your data is your concern. So security is a kind of layered part. That's why I'm saying, and I'm not an expert in that, to be honest, That's why I also bring not very much topics here, but this is something where we hopefully improve in the future, where I can point also to more lectures. We will do a little bit of quantum cryptography in the future there from my team, but I think there are others, Jackie from Reykjavik universities and so on, that have really more skills in this area. But another way to see it is also now the kind of legislation, the law aspect with security, right? You see software portability, you think that's clear, that's easy. Maybe these days with standards, we talked about the S3 standard for storage, right? Storing my data there, and here gets easier because in a way, everybody is adopting the S3 de facto standard from Amazon. But when you suddenly move it outside of a EU membership country in US, suddenly there's also some law concern in that, because suddenly other agencies can actually look into the data. This is basically known as the Patriot Act in the past, that law agencies can always look in US cloud providers and things like that. And where safe harbor agreements coming, which were also not really were followed. So lots of big concern, where I'm also not really the expert. And to basically following this would be an interesting endeavor in the next couple of years. Just think about that in EU clouds, you're reasonably safe. But what means EU clouds is also an interesting aspect. What happens if a US provider is hosting in EU basically some services, right? So there are things where the boundary really of this legislation matters. And this is something what you also always have to keep in mind. Of course, the EU is always concerned with lots of privacy principles and so on, while the US is very much convinced that the agencies that require data have to have access to it. There was this big framework with the GDPR. I mean, many of you know that probably, right? GDPR, you have heard about this, which is a very important part and protects us, at least in Europe, a lot, and also in EAA countries like Iceland. But the immediate, basically, you go to some more Asian country, US, this is not at all clear what that means, and basically is not anymore followed. Also, unfortunately, if you think about that, the GDPR is a EU part. Each of the different member states have to interpret and adopt it differently, basically based on their countries. So this means you have also interesting black spots there, where you think it's very well regulated, but you think it is because it's in the membership country Germany, but not in the membership country Spain, because there's no GDPR that rules them all. It's just a big framework, and all the membership countries interpret and create their own. In Germany, I mean, some of you know is Datenschutzgrundverordnung nowadays, which is different, of course, from the others in other countries. Generally, of course, we are very well protected in terms of medical records and things like that, but there's always a sidestep here and there of the interpretation, what this then means concretely, right? The GDPR is a big construct, and we have lots of interesting discussions in my medical project, for instance, with a couple of hospitals, what this really means in terms of GDPR. We really need perfect experts in this area, and people that do this, basically here, this cloud areas, they're usually not. So we need really lawyers at hand to really understand this. Yeah, and this is basically with the data login. Another concern, of course, what happens if all data is lost, if all data is exposed, where it happens matters. Where is basically meaning, is it in Dublin in the data center happening? Is it in Germany in the data center happening, somewhere in US? And then different laws apply, right? When there's, for instance, this Garmin breach that I was alluding to, which was very famous in media. So lots of this is, of course, a concern for security in one way or another, also legal, and which is something I'm not an expert in. I'm a technology guy. I just point you to this direction, that this is a huge topic in cloud computing today, where is lots of gray area zone, right now. What is the kind of legislation here and there really happening? Now coming a little bit to advanced collaboration features, which is also something which of course SAAS has brought to us. Suddenly you have a chat client. You saw that a little bit in the video, right? You can just say SMS and messages to a customer. You can, integrate this out of your website. You can write a text and then click, have a whole user group addressed, right? Instead of doing all the emails maybe in a normal email client. And then with online social media, you can have whole web campaigns with a couple of clicks to certain people. And the merging of your email address will be checked with basically the social media. Okay, this is really that guy, etc., etc. So it's a much more productivity improvement, essentially. And we will talk of some of these features again in lecture 14 on online social networking. But really this ad hoc behavior now, and online gaming, I think, says it all, that you basically play even games together today, like CCP in one world, or World of Warcraft, which was one of the breakthroughs in this sector. So this is also something what this SaaS basically enabled us to really do. And of course, which is now very popular and people pay lots of money for it. Another good example is Microsoft, basically the 365, where you see another good idea of this cross-selling. You see how basically a whole university spaces, whole organization adopt the whole Microsoft philosophy, right? While in previous times you would find organizations building lots of Linux, Unix, let's say alternatives, we see more and more that Microsoft Office solutions or these similar solutions are taking over. Because it works so well, it's less maintenance for the, for the infrastructure departments. You have already the whole suite. If you look to the right, again, from, so to speak, the cross-selling that you have there, Outlook, emails, OneDrive, nowadays even Teams, right? And there was a time before Teams, even where people have used Skype and other measures to talk to each other. So basically, this is all integrated in one click away. Nowadays, we have just Teams meeting all the time because you can nicely do this in Outlook, click, 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 done. Right? So meaning, again, the cross-selling idea, unifying everything under one umbrella with one authorization and authentication, which makes it even more attractive, not 1,000 passwords, right? One basically login for everything. Federated identity, how we call that also in other contexts, is of course a real thing. And here it's also beautifully extended. You see more and more forums, Sway, that were not existing like 10 years ago. OneNote appeared in some point in time for better notes. And this was all based on basically the initial idea of having Word, Excel, and Outlook in a kind of office package that you buy downtown. Has someone of you did this? I did this. I bought this downtown, right? And bought a real office package, very proud. I have Excel and Word. So these times are over, but enables, of course, lots of productivity. As a university, always think about the downsides also. Now you kind of trapped in that. Yeah, all my documents of PhDs, whatever, what I do is everywhere in Microsoft space. Thus, to put that out now to another cloud provider would be tremendous work. That basically is for them the perfect idea of just having renewals every year, right? So this is a perfect idea of vendor login. When you think about that, all university professors are doing this. To get all this data now in another cloud solution is very unlikely. So they have the perfect customer, and hence they're focusing a lot of government organizations. Once they have lots of accumulated data, it's relatively hard to get that all out. Also, what you see, which speaks a little bit for it, is the hosting of these partly. So you have the options to host in Europe or somewhere else. For instance, what we have in Germany, I can say from all the research organizations, we are not allowed to use Google. Right? Because when we put our research into Google, it's automatically US. Here you can basically do certain EU hostings, right? So that the data is hosted in the EU. Here we can use it, that's okay. Although it's a US company, it's a bit weird, but still you see how that works. And this Google is sometimes enforced. For instance, the DLR is aerospace in Germany. Some of you from my German colleagues will know. We work with, there's no Google space. You can collaborate with them in EU proposals in Microsoft, but not in Google, right? Just because this policy is really hard enforced. In our research center, it's also basically more and more encouraged to go away from these services. But they're just so good, right? They scale so well. It's beautiful to use them, sharing. I mean, we have sometimes 20, 30 people on one EU proposal writing for a grant. And when you do this in others that maybe are here displayed right now, for the recording, then basically it doesn't scale so well, but it's more secure. Companies are interested into security of data and things like that. So hence a really big space of lots of decisions also to be done by the executives today, which route you follow in terms of SaaS applications, the whole suites. Do you do fresh sales? Do you do CRM? What options they give in terms of hosting? What happens when the data is inside and the company goes bankrupt? So Microsoft, the likelihood that it goes bankrupt, I think, is almost zero these days. But of course, think about the niche markets. You have their data in, all your customer data. What happens when the data, when the company goes bankrupt? Can you rely that the data is really, deleted, Or will it be basically exposed on some hard drive somewhere? Who cares when the company is bankrupt, right? The people are away. If the running servers are still there, there's all your data and someone is also not interested in that and exposing it, it's your problem. So lots of concerns I want to transfer with these messages. However, it sounds sometimes negative. We also have to highlight some positive stuff. Here, working and commenting, sharing documents. I mean, this is just beautifully supported, sometimes in Google better than in others. But I think more and more the other programs getting there, like in Microsoft Office now, I think it's really getting up to speed like Google. But as I said, it also is the question of where you're hosting. Hence, Google Docs is free. Everything is nice and shiny. It really scales well, we have to say that. I mean, basically have a very nice interconnection, even with machine learning and Google Colab. Some of you have used Google Colab, for instance. Yeah, this is also very nice integration. Google Colab, Notebook, OneDrive. So this is all beautiful. But of course, they have also their business paradigm behind it. Google is very powerful today, but of course, there are also some Google AdWords and AdSense. I was talking before already. I will also present in later lectures where they get their money from. And this is one example of it. As I said, we will look at this AdWords a little bit more because they influence also these days how you position your SaaS clouds, right? You can go to AdWords, you see the keywords that people are searching for. So you create your website and you create your service to the things that people are searching for and not what you think is a good product name. You go to the AdWords, see Keyword Inspector and see this is what people really need in Reykjavik. And we will come to this later on. But this is a huge market and it actually contributed to the fact that we have something we call SEO today, Search Engine Optimization, which then grows to whole social marketing campaign and the whole idea of really making lots of money with the SaaS applications or apps that you have. Let's say some apps where there's in-app purchasing. If you're not, you have ads all the time and things like that. So one part of it, another part of it is a geographical location example that you have today. If you target, ads, you can put that really very, country by country, region by region specific. You get information from this specific. What are the search strings used basically mostly now in downtown Iceland, right? That's what one click away, AdWords, Keyword Inspector, Iceland, and let's say tea or coffee. And then basically you know what exactly the people are searching for. So this is all known and it's actually exposed by Google to improve your product, to improve indirectly then also your possibilities of using that information, not for ads, but for your own products to do. And yeah, basically another idea, of course, now to use the cloud is this niche market. So in former times, you have been going to downtown, get your proud office package, and then you basically have no chance that next or right to it was a law package, right? That you see here. So this is a niche market really for online contract management, legal elements. Again, I'm not the expert, but you don't have found this there somewhere in a kind of store because it's not mass market, right? Downtown space is really expensive. So the people don't put it there for sale because maybe 1 out of 1,000 that buy an office package would buy this. Now for niche markets, it was a very hard time to have software. You have very specific advertising campaigns, go to very specific, hopefully customers. So basically there was no big chance that you have an online contract management solution really skyrocketing because it takes a hell of a lot of time to marketing to your sector. You have, of course, some papers, some flyers, some magazines where you can put advertising in that time. Nowadays, basically, you just have a search engine and you basically see with AdWords where the people are looking for in terms of law, in terms of contract management, the tags, the keywords, everything is known, even with the amount of users basically searching for it. And then you actually optimize your product in that respect that this can be easily found on the web page. Again, I'll show you how that is done with AdWords and AdSense later in the course. And then you basically are found in a niche market with a couple of, strings in the browser. So complete new world, also something what is a big benefit now from the SaaS applications. And of course, this goes for ridiculous elements where you think there would be never a product on. I have seen that, I think, around horse riding, they're very, very, very specific things, but today is always one click away only in the search engine. So this is something which really put or get to the fact that we have seen cloud solutions now getting more and more and specific. That's what I'm targeting here. So basically you see that we have started with the hyperscalers in the beginning, Google, Amazon, Microsoft Azure, but what's coming more and more is a very specific cloud niche markets. Here, a couple of them. Altair Engineering is for engineers, a cloud, right? So this is really a very specific space of CAD engineers, we call that, computer-aided design or computer-aided engineering here and there. Lots of SaaS solutions now where the general public is not interested at all, right? You have to have a very specific background for engineering to use these services. But of course, with the internet, you have a very nice way of using it. These niche markets often, of course, reuse parts of Amazon, reuse MS Azure for the infrastructure because they have their specific, engineering practices, codes, applications to share. For instance, here you see CAD, of course, is used for car design, and you can go on and go on. There are different cloud providers more specializing in these topics more and more. However, down the line, of course, they use still the big programs. And the interesting thing is, what I also want to convey here is that many of those hyperscalers now have special contracts in place for these on-top clouds. You see that here on the left-hand side, when you see basically this partner program, right? So you get a discount if you work for this from another cloud because it gives them also indirectly users, right? When you build a cloud on top of IAAS of Amazon that you see here a little bit demonstrated, right? You have an infrastructure as a service from Amazon. Of course, they're interested that you as a cloud provider have more users. Why? Anyone? More users? Yeah, exactly. Because more users on the top from Altair means indirectly more users for Amazon on the lower level, right? So hence they have special packages in place to really encourage these on-top solutions, these on-top clouds, where you sometimes get some better deals than just being someone, doing a here and then, let's say, application design and so on. And another example you see here, the Uber Cloud, for instance, is a very nice other example, which you have here. Very specific services for computational fluid dynamics, things we do in the HPC course more than here, where you have their very specific containers just for this purpose of engineering parts in this area, right? So in former times, also very hard to get this to the end customers, right? A sales guy goes to companies, do you want to basically here buy our product? And of course, also the idea how you do licensing with this. So ANSYS is a very well-known CFD software. It's actually used by Airbus, by very big airline industry vendors. And basically, this is something which is now much more easier to bundle in different packages. It's not anymore ANSYS. It has different submodules and cross-selling, right? As I said in the beginning, if you're once in ANSYS, you maybe chances are you see the elements of sounds as well. So you buy the other package. And then it's beautifully shipped in the Uber Cloud these days. Uber Cloud as such is not really a big vendor if you think about Amazon, MS Azure, and so on, but they found their niche market building on top of AWS and other services with engineering products in the CFD domain. So this is very nice. And also, of course, partnerships agreements are in place. As I said on the slide before, they actually also work with Advania, which you know maybe a little bit from Iceland here. Is also one data center vendor here, a bit more also now in touch with atNorth, I have to say. So this has enabled incredible ideas, basically, how you can use a cloud. Also for us in science, I have to say, I just want to go to the end of the lecture just through a couple of services that you don't need to be by heart. But for us as scientists, the SaaS models also has enabled a lot. Many of the problems we had in science much more easier solvable these days, which is basically united under the umbrella of the European Open Science Cloud, right? So we have a project, for instance, called EOSC Nordic, but this is a really huge endeavor in Europe to have lots of services for science, uploading data, finding data, metadata, and so on is all provided. And I show you a little bit, a couple of these services, and it's again, just not the idea of learning now everything by heart for the exam, just to get the feeling these are common problems we always have. And basically in the past, we always had our own ideas, how we do it, right? And now we get more and more to certain hub services in this EOS cloud, where we have certain discovery information for metadata, for instance. You have a data set, you register it, and you have a B2Find service that all over Europe finds a specific data set. This was horrible basically before. Usually you crawl the internet, you use for years, you have contacts that give you a bioinformatics database, etc. You go on. The next one would be, of course, something that some of you know, Dropbox, maybe. Yeah, Dropbox for science, right? Dropbox is a commercial provider we cannot use. So we have to have an alternative. We created 10, 20 alternatives per organization. Here's an EU version of it. It's basically the B2Drop. And basically the same goes for a persistent identifier by B2Share. That is something that DUI, some of you maybe know, is kind of linked to specific documents, which is an identifier that you can always use and have uniquely defined a document. Here you go, we have a service for this with B2Share, we can share data and we get a unique string, how to find it back. We use this incredibly often in our basically publications. Even if we move the data, the ID string remains the same. So you see it's kind of common problems, B2Safe, data backups, replication. We talked already in the MapReduce lecture about it. Of course, we don't want our analysis, our measurements not to be suddenly, be away. Hence, we want to have replication schemes in place. And the beauty is this is all cost-free, right? We don't have to swipe the credit card. Luckily, as researchers, this is provided from researchers to researchers, so to speak, and the government helps there. But of course, it's really typical problems you would assume you always have. Staging data from a repository to a HPC machine for machine learning analysis, and then bring it back. So data transfer services of petabytes of data is also something which is there. And you can go on and go on. EOS Cup gives you a kind of idea how this works, and it has some commercial links also to it. So that some of the partners that you see here from the Nordic partners or from the libraries that you see there, these could be sometimes even charging because it enables also some marketplace, so to speak. But the general idea is that the EOS services are cost-free and that we can, as researchers, just use it. Just reflect before we coming to a close here. So perfect internet connection, maybe a downside, maybe an upside, right? That you need for SaaS. We know substitutes, not really. When we go to these banks, where you sometimes get these interesting emails here, you have to update your bank information. Could be not the right bank you click on. So this has enabled lots of problems, especially for many customers which are maybe a bit older and not so tech savvy, and use, of course, then the substitutes that you have in the websites. And of course, the data escrow is the biggest problems maybe today. What happens with data loss? What happens when a company gets bankrupt and things like that? So also sometimes you have to see the disadvantages. Let's summarize a little bit here with EOS, and then basically we close also the lecture. And the third lecture might be not so long anyway. So
the European Open Science Cloud, explained by the ZBW Leibniz Information Center for Economics. Amy is a biologist. For her current project on crowd behavior of bees and air quality, huge amounts of research data, such as measurements, already exist. But finding the relevant parts isn't easy. They're stored in different data centers all over Europe. For each of them, Amy needs a new user account and login. Each user interface is different too, and so are the keywords. It's a tedious and inefficient process. That's why the European Commission has decided to improve it by virtually connecting the data centers in Europe. The solution is called the European Open Science Cloud, short EOSC. From a single point of access, it allows millions of scientists to research all data centers at once, just like it's long been common practice with literature. Amy's excited. She can't wait to use the Open Science Cloud. But until 2020, when it's planned to be ready, some essential questions need to be answered. Who navigates its creation? A legal entity? A limited company? What is the business model to finance the EOSC in the long term? Which technical standards will be used for metadata, data exchange, and for security? To answer these and many other questions, the European Commission is appointing a number of expert bodies and will allocate a budget of 6.7 billion euros. It's a big chance for libraries, computing centers, scientists and policymakers to shape, develop, participate and maintain the European Open Science Cloud. The ZBW Leibniz Information Center for Economics takes part in the digitization of science and supports the process. Easier access to research data not only facilitates the work of scientists like Amy, it also makes quality assurance more transparent and helps to save costs. Unnecessary duplication of data collection can be avoided. You too can help to improve the daily work of Amy and all the other scientists, which is so important. Let's take part in this journey towards open science in Europe. More information on www.zbw.eu/en/science-policy.
Right. Yeah. So what you didn't saw in the video, which is very important, is that publishers today want to have the data also open. So you have to put the data open. In many respects, more and more in journals, more and more publications you do, and you need space for it, where to put it, and publicly, right? So this is, of course, not really in the medical sector completely, but still in other sectors like Earth observation common practice. With this, we say stop for today. I hope I see many of you later, but of course, I'm here available in the third course hours for questions if you might have. Otherwise, you see us later with cheese and wine downstairs. Thank you.